Good morning, good afternoon, Kamo Talihu, Kamo Star, Assalamu alaikum. I'm in the process of restructuring my broadcast. I have decided that I would do readings of my books. And now that I've located all my books, now it's a matter of organizing. How do I make these deliveries? So right now I'm doing random selections. Now, I started writing all these books several years ago. In fact, the books, I've written hundreds of books. I've had titles, and excuse me, and in those titles I've had volumes, and I've published books and rewrote them, and published books and rewrote them, and that's probably why I have so many books published, and they're all over the internet. And now, when I decided to start my program, and that would be reading from my books, I began to do an inventory of the books that I have written in the last 10 years. Most of these books were written here in Africa, but some of them were written in the U.S. But since I've resided in Africa for maybe the last decade, most of the books that I've written were written in Africa. Now, what is happening is that now that I do the inventory of my books, I find, what is happening is I have many books published. All of the books that I'm reading from are published. But what is happening is I have rewritten books. For instance, I have a series, Infinitive is Relative. When I first started writing that book, I was writing in volumes, but they were like volume 1, volume 2, volume 3. So I have many books that are written under the title Infinitive is Relative. And it's like volume 1, volume 2, it may be up to, I think it may be up to 50 volumes in that one, under that one title. And I know lately I've been reading from my books Infinitive is Relative, and I've used the alphabet, like A to Z. So if you decide that you like my writing, all you have to do is just go to Amazon and just put up all the books that I've written, and you can just decide what you would want to look into. Okay, now today I'm reading from my book. This is this is not an ebook, but the title of this series is E equal mc squared. Infinitive is relative, and this is volume 36. And this book was first, I'm looking at the copyright, it was first copyrighted in 2020, so that means that I probably wrote this book between 2019 and 2020. And it's copywritten both in Kenya and the USA. It was copywritten in USA 2023. But this book is called E equal mc squared. Infinitive is relative. And this is volume 36 of that series. Now, that book is probably in ebook form and in paperback. This book you probably can get a paperback copy or an ebook copy, but I don't think this particular ebook would be 99 cents, but I'm sure the same book is an ebook, and it's also a paperback. And let me read from this book and see where we go. I just pulled it up. Let's see where we go from here. Let's see if there's a commentary. If I'm touched, I'll give a commentary. If I'm not touched, I'll just call it a day. So let me read from my book. E equal MC square. Infinitive is relative. And this is part 1. And I'll begin my reading. Let's go way out into the ultra reality, way out into space. Let's say 1,000 million light years in another dimension. No, further than that. 1,000,000 trillion light years way out in outer space. And in this other dimension, many light years away, let's talk about a few things. But in order to talk, we need words. Therefore, let us discuss the word, and let us be some type of living being in this other dimension, way out there in infinity. You need an alphabet to create a word, but in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. And it takes an alphabet to inscribe a word. So what is an alphabet? That is the essential interrogative now. That is the essential interrogative now. The alphabet is a unique mark or inscription that correlates with a unique sound deriving from an oral cavity. Let's let this be the beginning of civilization in this way out world. Let's consider this way out place something like a planet as we know it. So let's consider the milieu which this guy is contained in prior to the discovery of the conceptual entity which defines the alphabet. If we make a critical examination of the definition of an alphabet, we will observe that this definition almost be used to define a word. For the moment, consider arithmetic. 1 equals 1, but also 0 plus 1 equals 1. Further, 1 is 2 minus 1. We could choose to use fractions and decimal numerals. We could use an infinite amount of symbols or numbers to represent the amount 1. As in the case of writing down symbols, which represent vocal sounds, we have an infinite amount of choices to choose from. When we consider ourselves a human being, the first sound in many alphabetical systems tend to be R. But in some languages, this same R represents the number 1. In Arabic, Aleph, the first letter of the alphabet is A. It's represented with a vertical stroke. And the number 1 is represented and written as a vertical stroke. These representations were made by the primitive man in our solar system on Earth. In the English language, consider words like A, and I, which are spelled with the letter of the English alphabet. It only takes one sound to express the symbol and an idea. So early man on Earth assessed simple sounds produced by the mouth to launch the alphabet. The amount of the letters in the alphabet was few in the beginning, but considering the limitations of early man's knowledge on Earth, these sounds, which correlated with his marks, served as an essential purpose. I'm gonna stop reading that. If you have been following me, I had indicated to my reading audience that I've written many books on linguistics. And here, I'm dealing with the oral cavity. I'm dealing with man, how we as human beings begin to have languages. And I think in this particular volume, I talk about, that was just only a portion of the whole book. And I'll give it again. This book deals with the alphabet. We know most of the languages that we know have have something like an alphabet or something sort of equivalent to it. You know, you got Chinese and Japanese and those Asiatic type languages. You don't necessarily have like but in the European languages you have the symbols, you know, like A, ba, B. Basically, what I try to do, I use my own intuition, trying to figure out how language developed in mankind. How did it develop? And one of the premises that in my research, and one of the premises in my beliefs, based on my research and observations, is that language is determined by the shape determined by the oral cavity. You know, it's very easy to say and think when the first sound from the baby's mouth is used as you know, I maintain that the development of the language coming from the oral cavity is based on the oral cavity. And the simplest sounds that are made by the oral cavity establishes alphabets. For A, ba. The next sound that can come from the oral cavity, let's say ba. If you see how we manipulate our mouth, the simplest things that come out of our mouths are and ba. But then as language became more complex, then you get sounds like whoa. The complexity of language, spoken language, is determined by the oral cavity. I did a lot of research and a lot of studying in language development. In this particular book, I just pulled it up. It's in my series E equal MC squared. Infinitive is relative, and that was just part 1. and that's volume 36. I indicated to my viewing audience that I've written many books dealing with language, and I've done comparative analysis of languages, like I've compared Chinese to Russian. It's a long story, but I've written many books that I'm reacting to the language process, the activity of the oral cavity, and I even get into writing, how writing. In fact, I did my own research, but then I began to draw my own conclusions, and I wrote several books based on my conclusions when I did studies in language development. And this particular book, which was written in 2019, is called E = mc². Infinitive is relative. And you're going to find that I am intrigued with the formula E = mc². I've done a lot of things with that formula, and I've explored it a lot. And the impact, and the thing is, I think that formula, E = mc², is a very powerful statement. And I've investigated it, studied it, and observed it, and I've even written a children's play based on it. So this is just one of my books that I thought that I could just read to my read some portions to my viewing audience. I got a bunch of books to read, so you can tune in as much as you want, and maybe you may find something quite interesting. I don't know what book I don't know which book I'll pull out and read to my listening audience, but I do promise you that my presentations here will all be based on my writings. And of course, I am promoting my books, hoping that maybe I can increase my sales. This is MUSAU MattmeachamJR signing off on Earth.